Morning. Sorry we're running a couple of minutes behind. I think the person we were just trying to contact has just arrived, so bang in the nick of time. First of all, welcome to our Music Industry Day. We're going to be running seminars throughout the afternoon here in the auditorium. And before we start, I just want to let you know about a couple of other things that are going on as well throughout the one of them throughout the afternoon. First of all, Chris Tams from the BPI is going to be talking about music industry apprenticeships and internships. There's been some government funding come through recently to help people kind of find a way into the music industry, and I'm sure lots of you know that historically it's always been the case that if you want to be an intern in a music business, you usually have to do it for free and sort of learn the ropes as you go along. Well, recently there's been some funding come through from the government and UK Music to fund people to take on an internship or an apprenticeship, and Chris is going to be talking about that. So if that's of particular interest to you, you may want to go upstairs to the dance studio on the first floor and hear Chris talk a bit about that between 12 now and 12:45. So if that's more relevant for you than this, what we're going to discuss in a minute, then please do that. The other thing that's going on is Leo O'Brien from the PPL. He's running drop-in clinics throughout the afternoon between now and 1:30, and then again between 2:15 and 3:45. And he also is upstairs in the meeting room upstairs. There is a sign on the door to show you where he is. So if you want to find out how you can earn money from your music via the PPL, then Leo is the man to go and see and talk to you about that. If you don't know what the PPL is, then he can also tell you, obviously, lots about the organisation and why you should be a member of it. What else do I need to tell you? Well, I guess I need to tell you that we are Mingle Music, and today is partly about celebrating our launch. We set up the agency last year, and the key aim of the agency is to seek gig opportunities for musicians in the southwest, but also further afield, by building strong links with promoters and venues across the UK. It's early days, as I say, we've only been going a few months, but the signs are looking good, and we already have quite a strong roster of 120 bands and singer-songwriters and DJs. And also a few classical musicians too. But we aim to be more than a booking agency. Looking forward, our vision for the future, in association with Music Southwest, which we'll talk a bit more about later, is to develop and strengthen music industry links and networks in the Southwest, and to offer additional services to musicians, such as educational workshops, courses, networking events like this one, amongst other things. The team currently includes myself, Nanette McClelland, who's on the door at the front, who you may have met when you came in, and Maz Totterdell, who's floating around somewhere as well as Charlie Presberg, who was meant to be here, but unfortunately he's stuck on the M5 because of a vehicle fire. He was meant to be chairing the first panel, but unfortunately there's just nothing he can do about it because there's been a big fire and the traffic's a nightmare. So Finn Irwin, who set up the Bike Shed Theatre, who some of you may know, has very kindly offered to stand in right at the last minute to chair the panel. So thank you, Finn, for that. So I'm going to shut up now and I'm going to hand over to Finn, and we're going to be talking about gigging and touring during this panel. And then at 12:45, we're going to swap the panel around and we're going to be talking about festivals and how you can kind of increase your chances of getting those festival slots. And then at 1:30 we'll break for lunch out in the cafe bar. So without further ado, Finn, give him a warm welcome. Thank you.
Thanks. So we'll start off on a set and I'll get everyone to introduce themselves, if that's okay. People all the way over there. But this discussion's about gigging and touring, so it's about kind of how we can do that and what we can learn from that and what you guys can impart to people. And then we'll discuss a few things, and then if people want to ask questions, I'll field some questions at the end. So, Zach, can we start with you and we'll work? back around here.
Yes, I'm Zach Peters. I'm an agent for DMF based in Exeter. So we do management and agency work, and we also programme Beautiful Days Festival.
Great. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name's Sarah Woodward. I started my career in the music industry in the classical world, and in the last 5 or 6 years I've moved into band management. I run a company called Echo Artists, which is a small label and artist management company, working with a few artists, but currently mainly with a band called These Raining Days, who are doing very well in Europe. Their album comes out this summer and being licensed internationally, touring and gigging.
Great.
Hi, I'm Sarah Lacey. I run on-track music events with Adam Isaac. I also book for festivals occasionally, and I'm doing Breathe Fest at the moment for the Breathe for Joe campaign, which you might or you might not have seen in the papers and on the news. Okay.
Hey, I'm Ollie James. I'm a tour and production manager and also run an artist management company as well.
I'm Adam Isaac. I'm a gigging musician, have been for 12 years or so. And I like to do music events, currently booking for Bixen Fest and various other things.
And I'm Finn Owen. I set up the Bike Shed Theatre, which is a theatre in Exeter and cocktail bar. So, but I've been involved with the music industry in Exeter for the last 10 years. And so I have a keen interest, and that's where we are. So great. So I've got a list of a few things to kind of that we might like to discuss. So if anyone wants to start, and then we can pitch in. But starting off with building a fan base through gigging and touring, and if there's anything you feel is a good way of starting to build a fan base, where's best to begin with that?
I think social media, having your media spot on, your photographs, your videos, and personally for me, if I'm booking anybody, I'll look at their live performances, their photographs, how they're running their social media, how their website looks. It's absolutely essential, I think, to get it going, definitely.
Yeah. Do other people who are kind of booking music feel that that's a really
Presentation, I
presentation?
guess, is the first thing that people would look at. It's the first thing they'll see when you make contact with them.
Uh-huh.
And then just trying to get yourself out there playing gigs and of all shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
You know, you start by doing the open mics and
Yeah.
anything like that
Yeah.
to get yourself out there, and then from that point, you know, the ball is rolling.
Mhm.
Hopefully, it will snowball with the word of mouth, and you know, you try something a little bit bigger each time, and you know, hopefully you'll pick up a few fans along the way. Maybe be organised with the way that you distribute your information
Okay.
to those people that are interested to come and see you,
Great.
and hopefully it will build from there.
Okay. So being organised and distributing that, what can you elaborate on? Good methods of building that relationship with your fans, and keeping them informed of what you're doing, but not bombarding them with too much. Can you bombard people with too much information?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's really off-putting, actually.
Okay.
It's really off-putting. I'll find, and I would imagine Sarah gets it, Adam gets it. We probably all get it. Random people will friend request us on Facebook, and they will just bombard you with stuff constantly, and quite often it's not very good.
Okay.
So, you know, and then you feel awkward about the whole thing. So there is definitely a right way of doing it.
Okay. What's the right way of doing it? Can we?
I would say the right way of doing it, especially if you haven't met that person, is to send a media pack to one of us, you know, with all the right links, all the right photos, Facebook, Twitter, website, a bio, anybody they've supported, you know, anything that's really going to grab you, and always make your bio interesting. You know, quite often they can go on too long, so make it captivating, make it short and sweet.
Yeah, as far as Facebook's concerned, I think they're making it a lot, obviously everyone knows, making it a lot more difficult for you to engage with your fans. But I still think it's important to try and keep that dialogue up with your fans, and people will come back, they will revisit it, but maybe sort of keep posting, you know, interesting little things, not always just saying we're playing at such and such on Saturday. Try and engage your fans with things about yourselves. But then every now and then when you've got something that's really important to say, like maybe you're releasing a video or a single or something, then use that and boost that post, pay for that post to be boosted to get to your fan base. Don't boost every post.
Yeah.
You know, you'll just annoy people. But that it's still really, really important, that whole, and obviously Twitter and Instagram and all of the different social media. But also, you know, you were right, Adam, really be well organised about it, have a plan, but work really hard. You know, that's the bottom line. If you're a musician in the industry nowadays, you can't just get on stage and expect it all to happen. The most successful musicians in the industry are those who work as hard as their managers. You know, I mean, right from Beyonce down, it's like you've got to be prepared, sadly, to put in the hours and the background and the legwork.
Yeah. So in terms of starting out, if you're starting out, kind of getting a brand, a media pack, kind of that kind of social media is a good way of kind of starting to build a fan base so people can know what you're doing. In terms of the gigging, you know, is there a kind of feeling of can you gig too much?
I think in the early stages, no.
I agree.
I think when you're just starting out,
Yeah.
I think you should gig as much as you can and get used to being in that situation.
Yeah.
But later on, that then comes the whole kind of spacing your gigs out, making sure that you don't upset this venue that is just down the road from that venue, and it's, you know, you've just got to go with the time, and in the early stages, just play as much as you can.
Yeah.
I'd say unless you're gigging, you can't get your craft right. You've got to get it right, and it will take time. But then obviously, you've also got to build up your fan base, and so you want to start locally to do that. So gigging in your local area and building up your fan base and getting your live show right is essential.
Yeah. I don't know, how many of you are kind of based around here in Exeter in the southwest? Is everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So that's useful to kind of talk about Exeter, I suppose, and kind of this region in terms of gigging in the city and then getting out there and like starting to tour, if you like, locally and getting into more rural locations. Has anyone got any experience of that and how effective it is to kind of move out of the city, which is probably where your biggest fan base is going to be?
We find actually that sometimes when we go to places like, for example, Bideford or Mid-Devon or places in Cornwall, that very often you actually go down better in those areas, partly because they're not always having as much live music, sort of, you know, quality live music, maybe that they're not exposed to it. So actually, if you can get somebody in that area who's really enthusiastic about you and can spread the word and can promote you in that area. But you're right, you start in your city or your town and you build up, you know, that's your core fan base, and then sort of try and just move a little bit further. Then you're looking at Bristol, you know, looking at touring. And there's also sort of milestones in a band's career where, you know, you have to, like Adam said, initially just get out there, get playing, get your fan base. But then there'll come a point where you look at your set and you think, well, you know, we're playing quite a few covers to please people. At what point do you say, we're going to take that leap of faith now? We're not going to, you know, you maybe do one or two or three, but your core set is now going to be your own material. And it's great when you see an audience out there all singing your material. But you can't do that day one because, you know... And the other thing is at what point you'd say, right, well, we're not going to play pub gigs anymore because people won't pay to come and see it as a festival. So maybe you might just pick 2 or 3 venues that you might continue, but you're not going to go and do all those, you know, those pub gigs that you have to do to start with. So, you've got to, there's those milestones.
I also think that there are a number of different ways. There's no right or wrong way to do these things. And I've always tried to question what it is that I actually want from music. And for me, I've just wanted to work in music. So I wanted to be able to sustain a living from playing and being involved in it. So it's not necessarily, some bands have a goal to have all their own material out there and they won't play one cover song. Some bands just play cover songs. Some bands play a mixture of both. And it's judging what you need from it and what you want from it. If you're happy to to just play your own songs and accept the fact that you might not get paid much money to do that, because let's face it, that's what happens when you start out playing original music. It's something that you have to decide, and sometimes that's the big issue, is the money.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to think about, how can we get by playing original music, you know, for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So then you need to think about other ways of sustaining that. Do you seek investment? Do you need to do something else in the background
Mm-hmm.
to keep that going?
Mm-hmm.
And it's about finding a way that works for you to get what you really want out of music.
Yeah.
I think it's also not just thinking in the region that you're in. You need to be looking elsewhere. You don't. With the internet, you can find people now. You can find promoters in Spain. You can find promoters in Germany. You don't just need to be looking at your local area. And as soon as you've got a set together, if you're dedicated enough, you can get in a knackered old van and drive off around Europe. It's. I mean, I started touring with my own band when we did our first tour when I was 17, I think, and then there was no internet, so we just phoned up and managed to get a load of people around the UK, and then ended up in Ireland, and then off around Eastern Europe and all sorts of places, just driving around in a van we bought for £25.
Great.
And then when we come back, you get some work for a couple of weeks, and then off you go again, and just keep touring. It's
So would you say that getting out there as soon as possible and starting to kind of get around the country, around the world, is useful from an early stage?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, it's just it's more useful than, you don't want to, when you start contacting record labels straight away, because most of the time when you first start out, when you're young, your music's pretty shit, and you don't want to be ramming that down record companies and sort of destroying your name.
Yeah.
Straight away, you want to be out there gigging and honing your craft, basically, and learning how to write songs and how to play in front of an audience. And then, having done that for 2-3 years, you're sort of then more ready to cope with record labels then.
Yeah.
Definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
Is the whole, you know, I think you have to separate the record industry from music to start with.
Yeah.
Because if you're thinking about getting a record deal straight away, you know, that's the big one. They're going to see your name, you send them all the demos, and you go, hey, listen to me, and they're like, okay, well, we know not to listen to that one again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
even though it could be great within 2-3 years, but if you've already sent them your CDs over to them, then it's just a name that they're not even going to listen to it.
They always say in the industry that the industry will find you. I mean, I'm not sure that's entirely true, but I think there is definitely a point where you go, right now we're ready to approach the industry, or to put ourselves in front of the industry.
Yeah.
But there is also that thing that if you're doing all the things right and you're building up that fan base and you've got an awesome live sound and you've got a buzz going, they will come and check you out. It's their job, you know. At some point someone's going to come along and go, actually, yeah. And the other thing is that in the industry there's this sort of sheep mentality where if one person, you know, you get your agent, then the label gets interested, and it's building that team, you know.
Yeah. Seems to be a bit of a kind of a strategy in terms of, and obviously it's going to be different for every band, and it's going to be different, but do you think it's worthwhile kind of in the beginning of forming your band and thinking, what are we going to do, and laying out some kind of strategy?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's difficult, because the musicians I know want to be creative and they want to write their songs and stuff, and they perhaps don't think of business straight away. And that's kind of a bit not rock and roll either, is it? But it is important to have a strategy. So you've just got to get it right when it's sort of right for you.
Yeah.
But I'd get your music and your live sorted first, personally.
There are too many bands that form and then run off and spend all their money buying flight cases and having them all printed up with their names before they've actually concentrated on music. And that all, there are a lot of bands you come across like that. Everything else is in place and it all looks fantastic and shiny, but then the music's just not there. And and you don't necessarily have to have all of that in place. You can send like the worst recorded sound on a tape to an A&R guy, and if they like the sound of that, then it doesn't matter what it looks like, as long as you've got the contact details on, they'll get in touch. It doesn't have to be that shiny and flash.
Yeah.
It's Yeah.
So it goes back to that gigging is really important locally, just getting out there and doing
just
those.
getting out there and gigging. And
then when
then
you feel
the other
that-
important thing is being able to do horrendous jobs when you get back in order to pay to go out again. You just have to accept that you're going to do some awful, awful jobs.
So going back to kind of starting to that tour, so we've got the gigs and you're starting to build your fan base, dealing with venues and promoters and doing that. You were talking about the internet. Can you kind of talk about experiences or stories of how best you can go about starting to look into a tour?
It's difficult when if you haven't got any decent press out of your local region, you can't pull a crowd. The way I always try and recommend to people to try and actually get a tour together is if you've got a good network in your own local region, then you can find bands who sound similar, who've got a sort of reasonable following in their area, and then try and do gig swaps. So they offer you a gig, you can offer them a gig.
Right.
And that's the sort of, when you're at that starting point, that's the easiest way to try and get a tour together, because some promoters will get back to you, and if they've got a sort of good following anyway to their night, it doesn't necessarily matter who they put on as long as they're good.
Yeah.
But if you can't pull anyone, then a lot of promoters are gonna, even if they think the music's great, they're gonna struggle to actually offer you a show. So I'd say gig swap is your first approach to try and put a tour together.
Okay.
I would say also always at a gig, if somebody comes up and talks to you and they say, oh, I can get you a gig at Glastonbury, or I can get you a gig in Italy or whatever, make sure you get their contact details and follow it up. It may be absolute rubbish. You never know. And I mean, some of the things that we've got in the last year have, in fact, quite a lot of them. I mean, I got one guy came up and said he liked the band. As a consequence, we got a gig in Rome supporting Echo and the Bunnymen. As a consequence of that, we ended up supporting Bon Jovi in the San Siro Stadium in Milan. And that was because I didn't let it go.
Yeah.
And every contact is really, really important. And make sure you've got that address book, you've got it in your phone. In fact, what I do when I go to something like this even, or, I'll just put notes in my phone. And then afterwards I'll go back, and even if I'm drunk, you just like, the next day you look at it and go, oh yeah, there's that guy.
Yeah.
And just contacts, really
That is
important.
something I find with so many musicians. They're so laid back.
Yeah.
They will have so many contacts, not necessarily the person that they need, but on their phone they'll have 3 or 4 people that might know that person, but they don't think like that, because I think for me as a booking agent, they have a different trail of thought. So there's so many people I know that actually do have so many connections, but they just won't think to make them, and will quite often forget to take their numbers at a gig and things like that. And I think every musician I know has been guilty of that at some stage. It's quite funny, really.
Yeah. So self-promotion as well as kind of being able to go and... So you've got to be able to promote yourself again once you speak to them.
It's just about following up afterwards and picking up that phone and going...
But having good people skills as well.
Yeah. And do you, straight away, day after, call them up, or kind of leave it a
bit.
Leave it a bit.
Leave it a bit.
And email, telephone... That's always a kind of so easy to ping over an email, but
there
when you
is
speak
that
to
fine
someone,
line, isn't there, between making a nuisance of yourself and not letting something go. And it is a balancing act, and it's something that you have to try and learn instinctively, I think, is whether somebody's genuine or whether they're just, fobbing you off. And you've got to use a bit of tact. And
as a theatre producer, I'll often send them an email, and on the email say, if I don't hear from you by Monday, I'll give you a call.
Yes.
And so you kind of let them know that you're going to call them. Which kind of often works quite nicely. Good. Okay. So the roles of the promoter and the agent and the tour manager, for a band, kind of once they're moving on and looking to get people involved with their band on their behalf as agents, as managers. Easy, hard? What's the best way of kind of, is it worthwhile, and when is it worthwhile?
Do you mean is it easy for the band to get an agent involved? It depends on the material that they have and the following that they have. I booked Lee Coleman's first ever tour, and he was completely really unheard of, you know, in London. We managed to get him into all the big jazz festivals, jazz venues in London, because we got him some really good photos. He has a great bio, you know, and people instantly went, you know, and venues instantly went, hang on a minute, we may not know who he is, but he looks great. This all sounds great. So then from doing the 606 in London, Jazz FM picked up on him. So he's now regularly played on Jazz FM. But it is about having that material there, you know, get those support slots. The support slots are great. If you can say you've supported those big names, for me as a promoter, I instantly go, right, well, now we're onto something. And I think that's, you know, that's if you can do that, like quite often there's a lot of people here. If you can get in here and support the bigger bands, then to put that into your bio is really essential.
And going about getting those support slots, have you got any advice for kind of who to contact? And
it depends on the venue, really.
Okay. And is it about finding the bands who are playing and then looking who you'd like to or who you feel you'd be good to support, and then contacting the promoter of that gig or that tour?
Yeah, I mean, it is quite difficult to get a slot with touring artists because most of them are touring with tour support as well, and then you don't want to fill up the whole bill with a load of bands, because then the tour manager for the headliner normally isn't happy, because then everything's got to be moved, and then also you do have buy-ons on tours as well, where the support acts buy on. So the agent won't allow any local support added either, or management. But yeah, I mean, you can contact. It's the best person to contact is the agent. I mean, you can contact management as well of the artist, but agents, which is why it is probably out of everyone, getting an agent is one of the most important things, I would say.
Okay.
It's they're the ones who can move you forwards, get you shows, get you festivals. I mean, Zach's been working with quite a few regional acts for a while. I mean, he's got the contacts. You don't when you're starting out.
Yeah.
He can get you the shows.
Yeah.
And
I think it's good to support local acts as much as you can as well. I mean, I'm from Essex originally, but I've been down here 8 years, and if we're an agency based in the southwest, then surely we should be working and promoting local acts, you know, and that's something that's quite important to me individually. But I also think, going back to what you're saying, it depends on the act as well when it comes to support. Some acts are really hands-on and they want the show to be cool, and so they're cool with using a local act as long as they've checked it out first. Whereas with others, they're not so fussed, so the agent may want to put an act that's new that he's just started looking after on with a bigger act to give them that platform for them to play on. So one of our acts that we look after, Levelers, they're going to be doing a tour later this year, and there's a bigger act going out with them, but we're also using an act from Bristol that are relatively unknown to give them that platform that we liked, but also, more importantly, the band liked as well. So you've got to get that sort of balance right.
Okay.
Establishing I mean, all the support slots I've ever got have all come from different areas, so I wouldn't say there's one magic formula. But one way is actually at festivals is to try and chat to other bands, you know, actually befriend the band.
That's a really
quite
good
a lot of the things that we've got have come through the guys just getting to know people, grabbing a card and following up afterwards. But also what you're saying about agents, you know, in the old days the holy grail was to get signed. It's like, are you signed to a label? But now, I mean, labels still have their place, obviously, but an agent, a booking agent, can make or break a career. You know, it's massively important. I mean, I don't know, I'm sure, like, there are certain, I mean, Muse, I know that they signed to the agency group and they had a very enthusiastic agent who got them out there, got them gigging. I mean, you know, there's lots of different stories, but, if you can, but it's really, really hard to get a good agent. You know, it's one of the hardest things because everybody's chasing those good agents.
I'd also say for any musicians that are starting out and they're just going through that transition period from, you know, the open mics and then, you know, the gigs locally and then going to London every now and again. It's also mixing with other bands, not really seeing it as competition, but seeing it as like we're all in this together. We're all trying to make a go of this. Let's work together and try and swap details and And I think that has helped me.
Yeah.
Actually, even after I've been gigging a long time, but in the last 2-3 years, I've done this more and swapped information and helped people out.
Yeah.
And I thought, a lot more comes back when you help other people, because they see that in you and they want to help you as well. So I would say just confer and realise that you're all in quite a tough industry. You're all trying to make your way in something that, let's face it, is not easy to make a living. So why don't we all work together and help each other out?
I totally agree with that. Good karma.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
definitely a way. There's a band locally that are great called The Computers, who are signed to One Little Indian, and I know that they befriended a band called The Heavy, and they go out together on tour, and they've really helped them. So, that is definitely the way forward. I totally agree with what Adam said.
Also, the sound crew, get to know, be nice to them, thank them.
Yeah.
And if they like you, sometimes they'll throw you something and say, did you know this is coming up? Or, you guys would be great for that.
Yeah.
And,
Never be horrible to the sound crew.
Yeah.
Ever.
Great. Well, that's a really nice kind of, let's all be nice and we'll get on and make
Definitely
it.
works that way.
We've got 15 minutes left. I'll see if anyone's got any questions that they'd like to ask at all. Oh yes. Oh, it's a microphone.
Hello, can you hear me?
No.
No?
Oh, there you go.
Sack the sound engineer. Oh, there you go.
Good.
Curious to hear from all of you, really, in terms of any real don't-dos, whether it's social media or making contact with a tour manager or an agent. Any kind of things that really turn you off, I suppose.
Again, the bombarding. I've got somebody on my Facebook still at the moment who a friend recommended to me, who is constantly, because I'm running about 7 different Facebook pages for different companies at the moment, and it's constantly popping up on my Facebook page. Look at me, look at me, look at me. Have you looked at me yet? Why not? And so that is, again, a terrible thing. Saying really opinionated, maybe inappropriate things on a band page that could offend, that's, that can be awkward.
I had a band contact me recently and they sent me a video and they said, this is a really rubbish video in a rubbish venue, but actually we're really good. And it's like, I'm sure you are really good, but don't do that. Don't send me something and say, this is really bad, but we're much better than this. It sounds harsh, but, try to get that quality material, and that one. I mean, I know what Ollie said about sending a recording, but I would say actually try to get it as well recorded as you can. Try to get
should try to.
as good a demo, as good a video,
Good
as
artwork.
because you only get one shot at the end of the day of sending that off to somebody, and you want it to be as good as it can be.
Yeah. I recently had a band who shall remain nameless, obviously, who are very good. Their videos are great. They're absolutely phenomenal. But they've only done 2 gigs. So a friend of mine, Lisa Portman, who's supposed to be here, who will be here later, who has actually managed Mick Jagger for 8 years, we were interested in taking these guys on, managing them. And we went to see them, and the sound was horrific. Their stage performance was not great at all, but their songs were absolutely spot on. So me and Lisa went back to them and said, okay, we're willing to work with you guys, but you need to do a lot more gigging, so let's get you gigging. So we arranged a gig for them with a great sound. It would be busy locally, and they said no. They said they wanted to go straight to the festivals. And at which point Lisa and I said, right, well, we can't work with you then, because we're telling you now that you're not ready for that. And they weren't willing to listen to someone like Lisa Portman. So if someone, if management or an agent says to you, you need to do this, they know what they're talking about, and you should listen.
Good.
I've got one more question, as I've got the mic, can I ask? I'm just starting a classical duo, and I wondered if there's any other perhaps anonymies of what you've been speaking about that are different, say, for the jazz world or the classical world, or in terms of getting gigs?
It's not my department.
I can't
Experience.
I didn't quite hear the question. Could you say that again?
Yeah, I was just asking, are there any differences in how you might approach getting gigs or approaching an agent in the jazz or classical world?
The process is the same, but obviously the people that you're contacting are going to be very different. And in some ways, it's almost easier to promote if you're falling into a very specific genre, then it's easy to target those. If it's folk, then you've got the folk festivals, but the process is the same. But if you're sort of like a rock band or something, in some ways it's harder because you've got a lot more to go at. But and people always say to you, what's your genre, and they want to pigeonhole you into some area. But I mean, it's just different. It's easier if you've got a specific genre to contact the people within that area.
Good. Does anyone else have a question? There's one couple down here. Go on then. You shout, and then this gentleman after.
I can't see where you are.
Our band is a steampunk band, so it's quite a new genre for this area, quite a new genre for the UK. Have you got any advice on how you kind of push the genre?
Hold it.
Have you got any advice on how you could push a genre and get it sort of out there a bit more? We've started doing things here. It's a great venue, the Phoenix anyway, and they've been really well attended, but it's still quite slow and sluggish. So have you got any tips?
Well, I would say if it's a brand new genre, it is going to be slow at first. Yeah. But it sounds like you're doing the right thing by doing local shows and building up your fan base and playing at different venues. Obviously, there's some great venues in Exeter. Where I live, which isn't far from Taunton, there's nothing. Whereas Exeter's got some brilliant. There's 3 brilliant venues in Exeter. So use the local venues for sure.
The brew house is open again in Taunton.
It's council run, isn't it?
And what about older musicians? Because I'm pushing 40 now. There's a lot of incentives for younger musicians these days, but there doesn't seem that much of a push once you pass 30.
I'm actually tour managing an act at the moment who signed a few months back, and they're all in their. I think one's actually 40 now. He's at 40, so it does happen. To be honest, they were all established beforehand in other acts, but they were signed by Infectious, who are a good label. And,
the problem I have, there's just no creche facilities at gig venues, it's a nightmare.
if you're looking at launching a new genre, then it's more than just gigging. You need to be looking at getting some PR behind you as well, and getting some radio play as well, and some press. It's more than just doing gigs if you're trying to launch a whole new genre.
And how do you do that?
I think there's a local press agent on one of these panels today, isn't there? I think I saw one on the list. I can't remember her name, but there are press agents in the southwest. Zach's dealt with press agent. What's the one that you used to use at Midnight Mango? What was he called? Local press?
It's not local. But as Mike
he's based in London.
He's based in London.
Yeah, he does local press and national as well.
He does, yeah.
But yeah, it's sort of split up into different areas. Some people, when they're smaller, will look after everything, but you'll have like national press, regional press, online press, and you can have radio plugging and TV plugging as well.
Reviews are really important as well. If anyone's had a really good review, obviously it's a bit risky when you're starting out, but if you can get that good review, a band that I'm working with at the moment called El Bourne, I think he's about 38 actually, but they're selling out the Jazz Cafe, the Borderline in London, every single venue they do. They're doing the Barfly with Adam next month, but they're selling out everywhere. And I've lost my trail of thought. What was I saying? Hang on.
Getting
yeah,
reviews.
and they managed to get their reviews in the Telegraph, and it's just rocketed. So obviously make sure what you're doing is good. Otherwise, it's not going to do you any favours. But yeah, if you can get the reviews, it does really help.
Great.
I'm not going to lie, it is harder for older musicians. There's no doubt about it. And the media, whether we like it or not, are quite anti, particularly, obviously, Radio 1. And that, but, you know, that's not the market that you're going to... I mean, you may be that you will get there in the end, but I think it is tougher.
Just lie.
Exactly.
I am 21.
You can get away with it, definitely.
Great. Could you pass the mic to the gentleman behind you? Great.
Yeah, I lie all the time. I find it works really well. Because I'm 22 now. So, yeah. Question, really, I'm quite interested. We play in a band, the Swamp Gods, and we play all original music around here. One of the questions I've got is, how have you seen, I suppose, the gigging scene change perhaps over the last 5 years, and maybe looking forwards over the next few years, how do you think it may change? I mean, one of the things we've been looking into is online gigging, as rather, because we play that sort of guitar-y, electronic-y stuff, which kind of lends itself, I think, to that. So we're trying to look at how to do things a little differently, how to maybe boldly go forth into new kind of whatever. So yes, some thoughts from you would be really appreciated on just how things have changed and how things might be changing from your viewpoints.
Well, I think the online thing sounds like a good idea. I mean, on Saturday I watched Outkast live at Coachella on my phone. I mean, that's cool, isn't it? So that definitely is something that's going to be happening in the future. I don't know how many festivals here. I think Festival do it. Do they show their festival online? I think Festival did it last year. But you've got to try something new, absolutely. It seems to be moving that way. So
The other thing is, if you are in a niche genre, like the lady was talking about before, is that in the old days it's quite hard in a small area to find a number of people who are into that. But now you've got the whole world. So, I mean, my husband plays the mandolin. He's got a big sort of international network now of people who are into mandolin music. There probably aren't that many people in Exeter who are, but globally, you've got that whole market available to you. So, yeah, I mean, I would agree. If you can do those, you know, and those online videos or whatever, and then get to that network, and join forums that are, you know, maybe interested in your particular genre.
Great. We've reached the end of the session. Has anyone got anything, closing comment that anyone would like to make? So it's about promoting yourself. It's about getting a good brand together and building that fan base from the bottom up, and having an idea of where you want to go.
Yeah, definitely.
Strategically.
If you've got that, the foundations, like these rating days, theirs is great. If you've got something like that, then even if you haven't really got your fan base there yet, if you send that to an agent and that agent really likes it, you know, they'd be stupid not to at least, you know, speak to their manager and see what they can do, because it shows that they're going to be professional from the beginning, you know, so. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you ever so much. Can we have a round of applause for the panel, please? Thank you. Can we have the microphone back?
Thank you very much, Finn, for standing in at the last moment there. And Charlie has now arrived. Round of applause for Charlie, who's sat on the M5 all morning, poor thing. I'm sorry you missed chairing this panel. As I said before, we are going to now quickly change over the panel. I think Adam is the only one who's staying for a second helping. So Adam, if you could stay seated, and if I could ask the rest of you to take a seat in the front row or do whatever you need to do. And